Hey guys, if anybody can hear me, I don't know if this is working or not. I've never used it before. I have no indication other than a ticking clock that says that I'm on. So I'm just waiting for things to show up. Zero viewers so far. Let's pull it up on my phone. George got me. Great. 7 viewers. Fantastic. Is it working on your end? I'm assuming it's working on my end. Hey, Bruce is here. Turn down on the volume on this one so that it doesn't do anything nasty. Hey, I'm watching myself on my phone. There's a 10-second delay, so that's fun. So let's get started. Does anybody have any questions? I guess I don't need headphones if nobody's talking. Hey, that works too. That's nice. I haven't done one of these in a long time, so I'm giving myself now 1 day a week to work on media stuff because I have gotten way behind. I've got so many videos to post and podcasts to post and so many things to post, and I just haven't had time. And so today is supposed to be my media production day, and I spent all morning trying to get tires on my truck. So that was fun. And then I spent all afternoon trying to get these microphones to work because this microphone does not work with this stand. It creates all sorts of interference for some reason. So I've got this microphone plugged into another cable, and I've got the stand microphone plugged into another mic. Trying to figure out what's going on there. How's the weather, Bruce? Got no comments yet. I'm going to run over to Facebook real quick and tell everybody that we are live. Uh-oh, I've lost my window. StreamYard, there it is. Freezing. It's decently nice today. It's in the 40s probably. Intermittent sun. Bees aren't doing a whole lot this temperature. So I guess I'll just start making stuff up. Hey, Bruce, you want to come on and talk to me? How do I do that? This is always that awkward part of a live stream when you first start it up and there's not very many people watching and nobody's asked any questions yet, and it's just awkward. That can be awkward. Let me tell you a story that I've been having lately to deal with. I've been dealing with a troll. It seems to be the same person. It may not be the same person. It's very odd that it would be multiple people that act the same way. But yes, beginner questions are okay. But I've got this person who keeps emailing me every couple of months. This person will email me and they'll pretend to be somebody, and they'll say, "Hey, I've watched all your videos and listened to all your podcasts and et cetera, et cetera. And I just have this one little question about this little thing." And I'm pretty straightforward, honest person, so I'll I answer honest questions. My rule is I always give as much help as you want, and the minute you start to argue with me, then I'm done. So if you wanna ask me how things are done, I'll be happy to tell you all the live long day how to do things. But the minute you start to challenge me on why I do things, then I'm gonna be over with it. Drop you the invite link. And so it'll be about 10 emails in, and this person starts to give me flack and starts to challenge what I'm saying, and it's basic stuff they're challenging me on, like the science and stuff. And then I'm like, I'm done, because you're not who you say you were. If you listen to all the podcasts and the videos that I've done, you'd already know the answers to these things. So what you're not doing is not even asking questions that are clarifying what I've said before. You're challenging, showing that obviously you haven't read or listened to what I've said before, and obviously not following my philosophy. So anyway, so I end up, it's been, I don't know, 4 or 5 times so far that these things devolve to this point, and I just get to the point where it's like, you know what, I'm done. You're blocked. Bye. Okay. Elise says, first year beekeeper here, caught a swarm in March, did not treat for mites, too scared. Hive is still going strong. What is the best advice for a new beak to keep treatment free? I would say the most important thing for a new beekeeper treatment free is more bees. So work on getting more bees. Split the bees that you have that are alive. The more bees that you have, the greater the chances there are that you will succeed. Succeeding being defined by having bees that survive over the winter. You're always going to lose some, and the more you have, the greater chance that you will have some that survive. So more bees. Also, another piece of advice for new beekeepers, I think, don't over inspect. Bees don't need to be inspected, really. That's really a human issue. It's not a bee issue. They'll be just fine without you. So let them be. It's good to get in there. If you have more hives, you can spread out the inspections between them so that you're not over inspecting. A lot of new hives get inspected to death. Bruce is with us.
Oh, am I on that fast? Oh, at least you're my camera. Sorry, I'm in my room here. I didn't want to be at the laptop. How you doing?
I'm good. How you doing?
Oh man, that has me off. Good. Sorry, what was I missing there? What were you talking about?
I was just answering Elise's question here. Can you see that on your screen?
Yep, I can see it.
Sweet. This app that you told me about seems to be working really well.
Yeah, I like it. It's pretty easy.
Makes all this stuff easy. Sean says, thoughts on feeding sugar syrup? I would not recommend feeding sugar syrup in general at all. That's one of those sort of newbie mistakes. It ends up being kind of necessary for a lot of packages because packages are very sensitive in the beginning to running out of resources. But in general, the whole purpose of bees is so that they get nectar and they bring it back here and make honey out of it. So me giving them sugar to make honey out of is kind of counterproductive in my view. That being said, especially a first year beekeeper, and especially if you're starting with packages, which, just to reiterate, is a very bad idea. Packages generally need to be fed. Never use entrance type feeders. They're just asking to be robbed out. Use top type feeders or internal type feeders and reduce the size of the entrance way down. If you do have to feed, if there's an issue for running out of nectar, running out of honey, going into winter, they don't have a lot of honey, feeding sugar syrup is not going to do you any favors. It's going to cause you to have moisture issues if you feed very late in winter. So best option for that for me is to wait until later in the winter, until they're definitely clustered and hunkered down, and then you can feed dry sugar if necessary, or some sort of candy board or candy block sugar chunk, whatever, however you do it. Rockin' Fletch says, and feel free to post follow-ups too if I've been unclear about anything. You mentioned in some of the podcasts from last year something about making splits and putting the nukes in a closet. Were they like mini splits or something? Yeah, I was trying to do a new thing, micro splits or something. I don't know what you want to call them, where I was making a split with just 2 or 3 frames. So 1 frame of open brood, 1 frame of honey, and then an empty frame or a frame of comb. And then what I would do if I was unable to transport those nukes to another spot, if you can transport them to another spot, which I ended up doing this year, I just moved them to my mom's place, which is around the mountain, about, 15 miles away, so they could mate and stuff. If you can't do that, then what you can do is put them in a closet for 3 days, and so they sort of forget where they are, and they won't go back to the original hive as much if you're going to be keeping them in the same area. Liberty Bell Urban Beekeeping.
Hey, Craig's here.
You're not that late. Nothing's really happened.
I'm unable to see the chat here. I don't know what's going on. I think, you mind if I hop off and get on my laptop really quick and come back?
Sure.
All right, let me turn this on.
I'm monitoring this on my phone using, it's about a, 10 or 15 second delay. But it's working. Seems like it's working. I'm going to mute his mic for a second. Daniel says, what are the chances where you live there are not other bees for queens to mate with? Where I live, there's 0 chance because I have, as time goes on, I just moved into this neighborhood a year and a half ago. So I have generally I've just been discovering over time, if I go visit a new neighbor, I moved a shipping container for one of my neighbors across the creek a couple weeks ago. And so I up visiting his place, and I can see other places, and I can see hives. There's plenty of hives around. I also have a commercial beekeeping yard exactly 1 mile in that direction, up by the freeway. So there's got to be some there. But as far as where you are, I don't know. In general, there are a lot more bees around. I'm gonna see. Maybe I'll remove Bruce and let him come back in on his phone. You still got the link, right, Bruce? If you need me to add another link, tell me. Generally, there's a lot more bees around than people realize. Even where I've been out in the desert in Arizona, you wander around, you find colonies in oak trees or in rocks. Kansas might be pretty rough if you're out, especially in areas where there are no trees. I know there are some areas in Kansas with no trees, but houses, there are way more colonies in houses and buildings than people realize. It's excellent habitat. Excuse me. So, I mean, if you're not sure, get some honey and set it out and see who comes to visit. Jeff says, I had really good results in spring by reducing space, so heat is retained and they have an easy time keeping brood warm. That's one way to do it. I personally don't bother. When I'm creating new colonies, yes, you don't want to create a small colony and then have them
much better.
You don't want to put a tiny colony in a giant box. So when I was making those micro splits, the three frame nukes, I let them grow into those 3 frames. When they start having those 3 frames about laid up full of brood, then I'll take them out and put them into a 5 frame, add 2 more frames of either comb or empty frames or foundation, whatever your preference is, and let them grow into that. And then once they start to get to the point where you don't want to let them be busting out of it. You want to get them upgraded before they think about swarming. Mustache is coming along, Bruce.
Yeah, I'm getting a little comfortable with it. I was a little afraid of that, but
yeah,
I think it makes you a better beekeeper if you have a mustache. I know a lot of the people that yell at me have mustaches. Maybe I got some cred now.
I've never been a mustache person.
Yeah, it's rough.
I don't think it looks good on me.
Let me see what's everybody talking about in here.
Are you in the comments now?
I can see them, but I can't comment. Lost 2 hives this fall. Yellow jackets. Yeah, yellow jackets are a tough one. I mean,
where are you located? I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. I don't know what that's supposed to be. Here we have quite a few yellow jackets. They live out in the wild here, and also some bald-faced hornets. Bald-faced hornets aren't usually an issue. They actually attack the yellow jackets. Here we do later in the season start to get yellow jacket problems. I wouldn't say that I've really seen hives overrun by yellow jackets here, but I know it does happen for other people. I would say that the bees were weak in that case, unless you could have reduced the entrances somehow or used robber screens. Remember, the purpose of a robber screen is that robbers find the hive using smell. So if you've got a screen in front of the entrance and the robbers are trying to get to the smell, they can't get through the screen. Meanwhile, the bees inside, they locate themselves in space. So if there's an entrance around somewhere else, they'll find that, and the robbers won't find it. They'll just be trying to get in following the smell through the screen. So that's the whole purpose of a robber screen. Nobody want to argue yet?
I'll argue with that. Can I argue with you?
Sure. What do you want to argue about?
No, I mean, for yellow jackets, I have good luck by open feeding. Like they stay busy. They don't really mess with my colonies too much when I have just something out there for them to work on. That's an easier meal. And in the fall when you really need to, when you may need to really feed. In my area, it's terrible. There's nothing here, so that really keeps them busy. And like you said, bald face hornets really aren't a big deal. They're so clumsy and big. They're they have a hard time doing much, at least in my area. um,
You're welcome. That's what we do. We get bored and talk about bees.
I mean, if you want some subjects to talk about, I'd be interested in hearing. You're better at explaining things than me sometimes. The thing that I've been hearing a lot is I'll get into a thing with someone and they'll say, "Well, look at my bees; they're so healthy compared to yours because they appear to be healthy. They're so they've had their mites wiped clean and they appear healthy." But I try to my feeling is they look healthy the way someone on steroids looks healthy compared to someone else. They
Yeah.
have that outward appearance. That doesn't make them any more fit to for future to keep them around. Was I okay with that? That makes sense to you?
Yeah, it's like it's the reason why they feed antibiotics to farm meat animals, because if you feed the animals antibiotics, then they don't have to spend bodily energy fighting the bacteria. The antibiotics do that for them. At the same time, it leaves them vulnerable. So if you stop feeding them antibiotics, they die, which is sort of the same thing that happens with bees. Because they don't have to take time to deal with the mites on their own, yeah, they might produce more honey and they might look like they're doing better. But if something happens and you stop feeding them, they're just going to die. Richard wants to know my take on screen bottom boards. I have no interest in screen bottom boards. I did start out back when I started back in 2003. Screen bottom boards had just sort of come into vogue, and back then the idea was that you had like 1/8 inch hardware cloth, 1/8 inch, and bees couldn't get through, and most bugs and things couldn't get through, but the mites, if they were brushed off or fell off, they would fall through the bottom. And the idea was that mites would fall through the bottom and you'd have at least some reduction of mites in the hive. The problem is, first of all, the side effect of that is the screen bottom board provides way too much ventilation in the hive, and the bees can't compensate for it except by plugging it up, which they will do sometimes. And the reason why I gave up screen bottom boards, the ventilation is a big problem because, in some cases they won't even use the bottom box because there's too much air flowing through there. They'll retract up into the second box, and so you won't get the use of that bottom box. The other thing that'll happen, the primary reason why I don't like them is because if they do help, then I don't want them, because I want bees that don't need help at all, because there's no screen bottom boards in wild colonies. In trees, it's just, I mean, if anything, a bottom full of detritus is going to be more natural. It's going to be what they do. And the other thing is, the Bee Informed National Survey has shown that there's little to no beneficial effect overall when it comes to hive losses. So if they don't help and they have bad side effects, and it seems like they probably don't do what they originally intended to do, then what's the point?
Can't use them for swarm traps.
Yeah, they're good if you want to move a colony and you need to get plenty of ventilation in it while it's in motion. But the other thing, when I've moved hives what I like to do is go down to your local big box hardware store, and you can buy a roll of, it's like gutter, or it's the screen that you put in gutters maybe, or like if you need to screen off a squirrel hole or something. It's like 1/8 inch expanded metal. So I just take that and I cut it in a I'm going to say 14-inch width, and then fold it in half and just kind of shove that in the hive so that there will be ventilation in the entrance, but the bees can't get out. It's cheap. I think I still own a couple of screen bottom boards that I just haven't gotten rid of yet. Do you have any screen bottom boards, Bruce?
I have one or two probably. I the few that I did have that I just inherited from I don't even know where. I just covered them over with wood. Um, and then I have one that I just kind of left the bees in it, and they've lived for like they're in their third year in that same exact hive setup. I've never moved it, but it's not just wide open air. They're kind of they're very low to the ground, and there's grass growing around it, and there's some boards and everything. So they're kind of open, but the wind doesn't really just blow right through them. I have a couple. I would never buy one. I'm just waiting for it to fall apart so I can take them bees apart.
Yeah, it's another one of those things that I wouldn't buy. If you gave it to me, I probably wouldn't use it that much.
So, was there any point? Remember the trolling you were talking about? Did you want to bring up any of those really great points anybody had? I don't know. Just more.
Oh, I can go look.
Maybe share screen. Let us
I
share
don't
it.
remember. I don't know if I want to do that. That might be a security issue.
Oh yeah. Richard watching from Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Where would I find those people? I did have somebody recently want to do a podcast swap with me. Somebody who seems like they're a some sort of success guru or something, and so they wanted me to had me on their podcast, and I have them on my podcast, and I'm like, I don't think, unless you're a beekeeper, I don't really think you have much to offer my audience. I can't find. I get hundreds of emails a day of all various types. Where's my block list? If I could find my block list. I'm getting off topic here. Let's see. Polyhives. Do you mean polyamorous? No, I'm kidding. Polyhives or polystyrene hives, basically styrofoam. I'm actually quite interested in them. They provide a lot more insulation, and people report a lot better performance out of the bees because they don't have to spend so much time heating and cooling. So I've wanted to try them, but I have so many hives as it is. I don't really see any point in buying new ones at this point. If anybody wants to send me some, I won't turn them away. I've always, I when I went and visited Michael Bush, he would show me stuff that people sent him to try and review and stuff. Nobody has ever sent me anything. I don't know. Anybody send you anything, Bruce?
No, I'm tiny. I'm like a little ant compared to like big bee names, but polyhives. I got like 15 poly nukes, and I really love them. I mean, I love how light they are and how just easy they are to take out and catch swarms with them, and the bees really do well in them so far. So I'm seeing how they're going to work over winter time. I have a lot of singles in the poly nukes, and most of them are alive right now. So I like them.
If you live in an area with more extreme weather, I would recommend trying them at least. There's a lot of people. There are a lot of people who have issues with any sort of non-natural uh, product or component being in their hive, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. That's fine. I'm not. I personally don't worry about it. Bees will live in pretty much any cavity or hole they can find. So, wood's great if you want to make really thick wood hives or something. Generally, more insulation is better.
I mean, with the prices of wood going up too. I mean, I don't know. I like them as an alternative.
Yeah, it used to be. I used to buy wood and build boxes, and now it doesn't pay.
Daniel Lineberry asks if we use small cell foundation or anything that we can use.
I do. I use a mix of everything, either small cell or foundationless. Also, drone size some. And I don't get too philosophical anymore about cell size. I don't make any claims about small cell being um, any sort of solution for anything. Here's what I say: small cell is the most natural cell size available for foundation. So if you're going to use foundation, why wouldn't you use the most natural size? That's it. Foundation is to keep comb straight. That's its purpose. So if you're trying to use it for a solution for mites, I think it does work somewhat. I think it helps. It's again not a solution. It's not a treatment. It's not going to solve your problems. It doesn't work magically, but I think it does help the bees with proper natural cell size. The mites are going to go after drones more than workers because drones are bigger, they're fatter, they have a longer post capping period, so it gives the mites a longer time to reproduce. So that's a natural selection toward preying on the drones. And so if you have a smaller worker in a smaller cell with a smaller body and a shorter capping time, then that's not going to be advantageous for the mites because they're not going to be able to reproduce as well. They might only be able to the female mite, foundress might only be able to make one mite, or she might not even be able to complete a whole cycle because she has to go in there, she has to lay a male mite, then he hatches, and then she mates with him, and then she can lay more. Anyway, it all takes time, and so it's preferable. And plus, if you lose some drones here and there, it's not that big a deal. If you can have a pretty good mite load. If they're only chewing on the drones, then the colony can go along well. If they're chewing on the workers, that's going to cause some problems. I also like, I mean, if in established hives especially, foundationless is great because you can put it in there between two other frames, and foundation costs money. Small cell especially, it's I think approaching $2 a sheet these days. So if you can save money, then save money. There's no magic to it.
Yeah, it's not really small cell. It's just cell. They've been made bigger. I don't. I'm kind of like you. I don't make claims about it. But if I'm doing cutouts on some bees and I measure their cells and they're 4.6 millimeters or 4.7, I couldn't see dropping 5.4, cell size foundation just right off the bat. These bees are on their own. They took several years to get that small. I just want to leave them that small. That's it. So I'll try to keep them foundationless, and I'll use plenty of foundation in the honey areas. It just makes it easier to harvest if I need to. But that's my only thing. You get a lot more cells on a frame in the brood area. I don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah, foundation takes work to put in too. So if you can skip that, that's great. One of the things that I noticed this last year, a recent year, I bought a plastic drone foundation frame because I was interested in using the plastic drone frames as super frames for honey, because bigger cells mean less wax and easier to extract. So I bought one and I looked at the cell size and it was just like outlandishly large. Like, what's going on here? And I measured it and I forget what exactly it was. It was like 7.2 or 7.4 millimeters. And so I went out and found a foundationless frame full of drone from one of my hives and I measured it and it was like 6.5 or lower, 6.1 or something, much lower. And so I'm looking at that, and if that's what people are using for drone frames, and they're creating drones that are way too big, think about it aerodynamically. A big drone is going to expend a lot of energy to fly, both in terms of mass that it has to keep aloft and also aerodynamic drag. It's going to take a lot of energy. So that's going to make an unfit drone. So that's not good. You want small, fast drones.
No, that is good. That's good if
It's good for
depends on what
us.
they're doing with their bees, but I think most people are using those so they can freeze them. Those drones aren't making it to the uncapping stage. Most people.
Hmm.
That's the main reason they use those for. If you're foundationless, they're gonna make plenty of drone comb. I wouldn't see a reason to.
What's the best way to transition to foundationless? Currently using plastic foundation. Like I said, stick an empty frame in between two drawn frames. You may have some issues with deep frames. Deep frames, you'll have trouble connecting the comb to the bottom of the frame. But with medium frames, it works great. So for a deep frame, you might want to use a wired frame. It's very important to have the hive level side to side. Front to back doesn't really matter. Hives are generally tipped forward so that water drains out of the bottom. But side to side is what's important if you want to get foundationless frames straight.
Stefano Brazulio's here from the group visiting us. What's up, Stefano?
I wouldn't recommend doing a full checker when you're making a split. If you're making a split, you say you have 5 frames, put one in the middle of that group and then more to the outside. And then once that one is full and has brood in it, then you can stick another one in. If you put too many and space the frames out too much, you can have issues with chilled brood, and that can lead to chalk brood. So I don't, in a box of brood, I will only put 1 frame in the middle, maybe 2 if it's a full box, but they'll be separated. I'll have like 2 full frames in between them. So yeah, don't want to do too many at once. And it depends on your weather too. We live in a big country and there's people all the way from South Florida to Alaska. So conditions are different. All beekeeping is local. It's important. Any melted wax on the top of the frame? Medium frames are good. I don't think so. Bees are going to be the best ones at attaching comb. Anything you do to try and help them is going to be subverting their best practices. Popsicle sticks, if you want to, not totally necessary, but it does help if you stick some popsicle sticks in the top slot in the wedge. Some people turn the wedge vertically and then staple it in there. I can't do hand motions. The camera's too close.
I used to do the popsicle sticks when I would just be dumping a swarm into a box full of 10 foundationless frames. I would have all the popsicle sticks and the wedges turned sideways, and I would say good 80% of the time they did it pretty well. They built right on them, and then there was that other 20% of the time, but yeah, they work. I I love just putting a frame in that has absolutely nothing in it, no starter strip, anything, no wax in between two drawn frames. It's cool the way they just connect it all the way most of the way around, and then when you cut it out, it's just really easy if you have to.
Is anybody still making foundationless frames? Are those still available?
I don't even know. I kind of once I learned that little trick about not even using the wedge at all, I didn't even look for them anymore. But
Whatever's cheapest. It's not that important. The primary thing is keeping it between two already drawn frames. If they have already drawn frames, then there's nowhere else they can go. They're just going to build the comb right down the middle. It might be patchy. It'll start in different spots. There might be holes in it. If you give it time, they'll fill in. Can I use my fridge for my bees in any way? You could make a fridge hive. I don't know.
a frigid open air hive. I've seen people have do removals out of fridges. I mean, I don't know.
You could turn it into a like a smoker, and you could smoke meat with it. Oh, they're all plastic inside now. That might not work.
Yeah. Put some lemongrass oil in there.
Narrow frames. I currently still have quite a lot of narrow frames in my hive. I don't like them. I don't want to do that anymore because the problem that I was having, especially with plastic frames that I tried, was they would be too narrow. So they would build on one side and not on the other. And then when things got turned around, you'd have comb pressed together. If you're starting with, I think that's a practice for better for a top bar hive or something. In a Langstroth hive, it just seems to me, even though it may not be optimal, it's more utilitarian to have a full 1 3/8 top bar. Just, I mean, for me, that's what the conclusion I've come to. Because I did try and trim them down for quite a while. I even bought a planer to do it with. It's not in here. How do you like my garage?
Hey, like my bedroom wall. Uh, well, narrow frames. Just try stuff out. You know, that's what's fun about this stuff for me. Just try different stuff out and see what works. If you know every single thing, beforehand before you do it, it's like then why even do it? Just try all that stuff out. I have narrow frames. I thought they worked they worked okay. Now they're just intermingled all over my boxes. So some of them are fatter, some are skinnier. Some of my boxes have room for an extra frame, some don't. It's always a surprise to me. But yeah, try all this stuff out.
I'm going to try some of these functions.
Yeah, let's see. Can you put like filters on me or anything? Don't try to get rid of my mustache. Oh, okay. There you go.
That's cool.
How many you got? Are you able to see who we have in here? Oh, I can't see.
Can I only do? Come on, give me my full 200.
Oh, you bought the year?
That?
That's what happens right there.
Yeah. That's a cool function.
You can get rid of the little logo up in the top too.
How much do I have to pay for that?
Oh, are you using the free one right now?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you can't get rid of it yet. I don't know. I think it's $20 a month or something.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it's not cheap, but you can. I mean, for me, I'm going to do my podcast on it, and I'm going to go live more as much as I can, just to try to get my money's worth, and it's not bad.
See, if I want to do a customized logo, I have to upgrade.
Yeah. Now you got that little coupon. I just went and got it for the whole year, just so I couldn't reverse it. I've had difficulty finding foundationless frames. Bees beekeeping shop owners look at me like I'm crazy when I ask. You can just use regular frames and just pop that foundation out. That's what I would do. Um, Top borer swarm traps this year. Do I? Samir Zubaidi Al Zubaidi says, "Do we get much pushback from the establishment?" I mean, if you want to call it that, right? I love it.
We were getting some pushback the other day, weren't we?
Yeah. Well, I mean, those are my friends, but I mean, I welcome it just because I kind of been sharpened to it, and I have some checkmates they just can't really say anything back to. So I don't really care. Let them do what they want to do. I want to do what I want to do, and I'm having fun. No one's gonna ever ruin that. So no one can really push anybody.
The biggest, I'm going to say, establishment pushback that I've gotten, I tried to join my local beekeeping association, and they basically immediately did everything they could on their Facebook group to keep me out. Like I posted a video from somebody else, my buddy Mark DeKivett, and they deleted it and said that I was doing self promotion. It was like, how am I doing self promotion? It's not even me in the video. And then somebody asked me what like famous beekeepers I follow. I'm just gonna from now on, if somebody asks, I'm just say Bruce Rodriguez.
There you
But
go. That's
what I said at the time was, and what's true generally, is that I don't really follow anybody. I've been doing this for 18 years. I don't need to follow anybody's philosophies. I have my own philosophies. I'm a nationally recognized speaker. Like I don't need. I've made the choice in the last few years to kind of even step back from that sort of thing. I don't consume beekeeping media. I try and think up my own things and go out, and occasionally I will find somebody who I really want to explore their methods. Like lately I've been exploring Sam Comfort's stuff. That's where I got the idea for the micro splits.
Yeah, I mean, beekeepers I like are like the cool guys that do removals on YouTube. Believe it or not, I mean, I love following that stuff, and I learned from the bees really a lot of it. I learned all the basic stuff. I'll pick up something a little more advanced here and there, but I'm not trying to make it a job. Let me see.
Yeah, you definitely don't have to treat.
Richard watching from Halifax. Oh, the bee tree. Would you know what a bee tree is? Basically, it's just a tree that some bees live in. In a cavity in a hollow tree. So that's what I call it. I know where there's dozens of them around me. I have a couple right here that I could take a couple steps and be right underneath, right near. But yeah, I mean, bees like trees. That's where I get most of my bees, out of trees.
I know of a couple bee trees in this area. Bee trees are cool. AAC. What is AAC?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a carpenter. I don't know any of those terms.
American Athletic Conference.
Yeah.
Advanced audio coding. Autoclaved aerated concrete. That might be it. I've seen that used. I'm getting into rocket mass heaters lately, and I've seen people using autoclaved aerated concrete or aircrete or things like that as an insulated material as long as it doesn't get too hot. So if you get concrete too hot, it becomes cement again. So you can't use it in very hot parts of a machine or whatever. But can be useful. Yeah, autoclaved aerated concrete. That'd be interesting. Do you know what kind of R value it has? It's becoming more open-minded. What a lot of people don't realize is that there are tons and tons of treatment-free beekeepers who just don't consider it to be really a thing. You know, when you get down into the desert Southwest, especially areas that have a lot of Africanized bees, nobody treats because it's not useful. I like to tell the story of my great uncle Wayne, who lived. My mom actually lives on his old place now, but he lived up in the woods. And when I first started beekeeping back in, was getting interested into getting beekeeping. I started in 2003. I got interested in 2002. I went and talked to him, and we went and visited him quite a few times growing up as well. And he kind of was one of those like varroa mite deniers. He didn't really believe. He'd heard of varroa mites, but he didn't think that's what happened. He did lose a lot of his hives. He did not lose all of his hives. He still had 5 at least. I think he lost 95%. He lost all. He had 50, and he lost all but 5. But still, that's not 100%. He thought it was a really bad dearth, but they survived, and they were a bit mean too. But I think they were mean before. I put into winter, let's see. I'm going to say 13. I don't really keep track too closely on the number of hives that I have. I set up 12 new stands here in the backyard, and I have one at my mom's place that's just been sitting out there for 3 or 4 years. That's my favorite one. I made a bunch of splits off of that one this year and accidentally imported the queen to my local backyard here because she came along with one of the splits. But that hive's been sitting up there just completely unmanaged for like 3 years. And I know I checked them recently. There are 2 dead so far. Which is pretty good considering the vast majority of them are new splits. Double or single over the winter. I don't have a specific size. We have, compared to like Bruce's winter with temperatures and snow and whatnot, I have a pretty mild winter. I'll maybe only get a couple inches of snow, maybe twice. Most of my days, in fact, 99% of the days get above freezing. Low temperatures here. The official rarely below temperature here is 21 degrees. So I think we've had 2 nights here thus far this winter that have been below 21.
So Craig is saying concrete holds temperature long after the change. That might be good for me. I want to do a cinder block hive just for the hell of it. Just put some find a flat spot out in my little wooded area, set up a nice little cinder block that'll hold bars and see if some bees live in it, just like they live in a you know under somebody's porch.
Hmm.
So that I can still inspect it. That might be pretty cool.
I just had another thought. Those clay flue liners, because they make them in like up to 2x2 at least. Those might be, I don't know, not very insulative.
The cinder blocks, they have like they're much wider. I could fill them in with something too.
Hmm.
Put a nice board on top.
That's what I use for all my hive stands.
Yeah, I'm doing it. You'll see it. The first ever cinder block, intentionally cinder block, top bar hive. Um,
Can I send myself something? Oh,
is anybody else coming on here?
you can send money.
Uh, Rupert's watching, keeping his eye on us.
Oh, I forgot I sent a message. Okay, he doesn't want to join in. That's fine. Yeah, I like this duck thing, StreamYard. It works really well.
Little lead linden tree.
Little red linden tree.
Well, there is a tree that's called a BB tree, which is I don't know the Latin name off the top of my head, but I don't remember it being. It's called a BB tree, but that's just because it flowers a lot and bees like it.
Hang on for a second. I got to blow my nose. Live stream issues.
How hard is it to move a standard hive to horizontal hive? See, these are like maybe Solomon likes those. Um, if it's the same frames, a standard Langstroth into a horizontal Langstroth, there's really nothing hard about it. Um, so maybe you might mean like a top bar hive. That's just that's doing a cutout, so that's not. It's one of those things. If you have to ask, you're probably gonna need some hands-on help with that one. Um,
I've made long hives before. I didn't really like them because I like to work a hive from the side, so I want to pick up a frame with two hands and look at it. But the long hive, I would have to reach across the hive and get the other end of the frame like this, and I didn't like that.
yeah, I have one. I don't like it either. It's
But if you can't lift things, you know, that might be helpful for you. Shook swarm. Anytime you want to start with a new type of hive, you're going to either have to cut comb down, which is a possibility. You may have to destroy the frame to do it, or do a shook swarm, which works but is very traumatic to the bees. It's basically like starting with a package. It's a little better than a package because the queen can lay from day one. But the other thing is, you're either going to have to put the queen in a cage or put some sort of queen excluder over the entrance to keep her from leaving if she decides, or if the colony decides that they want to abscond. That can happen also.
it's probably the only thing I could build cinder blocks in a line. That seems pretty easy. Fill it up with foam. I could do that. I know how to level the ground.
Yeah, that's what I'm figuring out how to do, trying to build a rocket mass heater. Build everything with clay.
Samir, all variety. Are they fussy? Yeah, I mean, it's just like a cutout, really. Smoke them, get in there, cut those. I wouldn't do it really, to be honest. I would either just catch a swarm or, yeah, put different bees in there. There's no point, really. I mean, that's just my opinion. Huh. I think once you do lives like more often and keep putting up more stuff, they'll just send out your notifications a little better and have a whole bunch more people in. So,
Yeah, we've been hovering around 20 to 25.
is it 20? Okay.
It's not too bad.
Is it?
I advertised it on Patreon and Facebook. And since it's on YouTube, anybody that's subscribed on YouTube, which is about 6,000 people, will get notifications. So we got a few people here.
Yeah, so I don't know. If no one has questions, I mean I know in an upcoming thing I want to talk about is just how much intentional brood breaks are being brought up all the time and mixed in and combined with treatment free beekeeping that some beekeeper might consider themselves a non-treating beekeeper or someone breeding mite tolerant bees by doing consecutive numerous intentional brood breaks, queen caging and everything to knock mite populations down. And I'm seeing it everywhere, even from people who I really thought were not doing stuff like that. Um, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I'm efficient slash lazy. So anything that involves, and I also have a bad back since I broke my back last year. So anything that involves unnecessary lifting and searching for queens and doing things like that, I try to avoid. But overall, anything you do in a hive is you're going to be selecting for something that needs that intervention by default, by definition. Anything you do, you're selecting for a hive that needs that, or that can survive that. If I'm doing, say I'm doing a lot of inspections all the time. For a hive to survive, it's going to have to be able to survive that. Now, that's not a natural thing that it should have to learn how to survive in nature. So that's not helpful. Same with brood breaks. Brood breaks aren't, maybe you'll be selecting for hives that have multiple queens at that point because that's the only way that they're going to thrive. But at the same time, you're kind of artificially propping them up, trying to help them thrive when they shouldn't be, when they should naturally eliminate themselves. So, for me, number one is it's lazy. Number two, lazy and efficient is so hard to separate because I don't want to do stuff that I don't need to do. The same, I was arguing with that guy the other day. Like when I don't have to treat, because I don't have to treat, I can do all sorts of other fun stuff. I have time to do all sorts of other fun stuff, and I have brain power to think of other fun stuff to do rather than sitting around all winter worrying about my bees dying. So, that's my brand of laziness, which I think is awesome. But the brood breaks do help to deal with mites, but at the same time, you're then selecting for bees that don't have the defense mechanisms that they need to survive mites. You're also not doing anything for any of the other diseases. A lot of people forget that there's other diseases just because everybody's so busy dealing with mites, they forget about the other ones. So I would rather spend that energy, if I'm going to be going through a hive and finding a queen, I can split that hive into a bunch of small nukes and create a bunch of new colonies. Why would I cause a brood break, which is going to severely reduce my honey output for the year it's going to set the hive way back for whatever they're trying to do throughout the season, which again is another thing that they need to be naturally selected to adapt to. They need to be adapted to brooding up and shutting down at the right times during the year. And if I'm causing a brood break, that's completely shot to heck. There's going to be no ability to adapt to that. So if I'm going to spend all that energy, I might as well make splits. And instead of having one hive that I'm over managing, I'll have 5 or 9 hives that I can let the bad ones die. And if I make 9 splits off of one hive at the end of the year, I'm going to have at least 5 or 6 surviving hives, which is way better. And that speeds up the process of natural selection because only the ones that are resistant will survive. Yeah, back injuries are a real drag. I have very little strength now when it comes to like holding something up at arm's length. If I can hold it like on my chest and kind of lean back, I can do pretty well carrying something. But bending over and lifting things just does not happen anymore. Do I use queen excluders? No, I do not. I do use queen excluders for a specific type of queen rearing that I do. That is a queen right queen rearing method, which you can find on my website, parkerbees.com. And so for that, I need to keep the queen away from the grafted queen cells. But other than that, no. Queen excluders, the entire purpose of queen excluders, it's a labor-saving device for a commercial beekeeper. Commercial beekeeper wants to pop the boxes off the hive and go extract them without having to deal with where's the queen, is there brood in my honey, all that. They don't want to deal with that. They want to pop the boxes open. They want to use either a leaf blower or what's the robber stuff they chase the bees out with?
There's
Some
bee on honey robber.
yeah, bee gone, some oil extract, whatever. They want to chase the bees out. They want to take the boxes in. They want to process them in a full box. They don't want to take frames out. So if you're not a commercial beekeeper who's worried about all that, then you don't need to put up with the side effects that queen excluders cause, because they're going to reduce your honey output. They're going to limit the size of your brood nest, which limits the ability of the colony to grow at the right times. It's a pretty good chance it's going to cause swarming. So if you don't need to, I mean, don't do it. And again, it's lazy because to put a queen excluder on, you're going to have to lift stuff and open up the hive. And then if you forget to take it off during the winter or before winter, your queen's going to get stuck below the queen excluder and she's going to freeze to death and your colony's going to die.
Jelly Neck is asking about basically Megan Milbrath's entire way of doing this, which is mite counts, so many mite counts, and then breeding off the low mite hives, and then treating and recreating the high mite colony. I'm doing the opposite, just because that's the way I do stuff. I'm keeping my one that has 52 mites in a 300 bee wash, and I let that sucker ride and see what happens. And if that one survives, that's the one I'm raising queens off. The other washes that the inspector did here, one was like one. It had one mite in it, and the other one had 3, I think it was, and then one had 52. So the other ones, who knows why they're so low? I don't know why the other one's so high. But we'll see who survives, and all 3 of them have some contribution to make to my next generation of bees in the spring. But we'll see who lives. I'd be silly to ignore the fact that a colony can can live with that high of a mite count done by a professional mite counter, on camera. So I love that. I'm excited about that. And
It's not the worst thing, but it's definitely not the best thing. It's better than just plain treating. But what you're doing there is trying to keep the hive while changing the genetics, and that's it's not the worst. But overall, I think it's not that helpful. Um, that may be the solution that commercial beekeepers eventually move toward. I mean, it would be great if they did that, but ultimately, the best solution is to let the bees deal with the actual conditions that they actually have to deal with and allow them to experience natural selection and become adapted to the conditions in the field.
well, these numbers that people get, these high numbers, they're happening later in the season. They're not. It's not like that. I mean, who cares? You don't know why one colony's number might be high or low. So if you're not letting them ride and see who actually survives, you're never gonna really know what would have happened. You're just kind of pretending that the ones. You never hear anyone saying, "Oh, these mite counts were low all year and then they died." They wouldn't want to admit that. Um, they're not giving the bees a chance.
And if you're requeening a colony that's already pretty well infested with hives, that's a human disease. Uh, if you're requeening a colony that's already infested with mites, even if you treat it, you're not going to get everything. Are you then just wasting a queen on a colony that might die anyway? I don't know. I'd rather find those colonies that have figured out how to deal with a high mite load. I think that's much more beneficial. And a mite load from a mite test is an artificial number. I've had colonies going. I've had that I talk about a lot. The colony that went into winter. I didn't do an official mite check, but I opened the colony and it was just absolutely infested. There were major proportions of the bees had mites on them. There were mites crawling across the comb. There were mites crawling up. I mean, you couldn't be more infested. And so I just wrote it off, thought it was going to die, and it ended up surviving. Magnets, how does that work?
The tide goes in, the tide goes out. Can't explain that.
Thoughts on using flow hives? If you've got that much money to blow, go right ahead. The problem that from the beginning with flow hives, the problem that I screamed about so much was that the flow hive promotional materials made it seem like beekeeping was just about a spigot on a box. And beekeeping is so much more than that. And it did an amazing thing, which was get a lot of non beekeepers into beekeeping. The problem is a lot of them immediately failed because, again, it's more than a spigot on a box. I'll call you back.
See, I would say almost the same thing you said, just with a different tone. I would say they brought in a lot of beekeepers and then they failed. And then their bees swarmed everywhere. So I mean, what worse could they do? What did they who's mad about that? Like I say, if you want to get a flow hive, get it. Might some people have luck with them, some don't. I mean, yeah, they're a lot of money, but it probably just ticks people off because they're assuming that since they don't know much about bees, they definitely don't know about treating their bees. And I don't know. I say do whatever you like to, and
Mm-hmm.
if you quit, not everybody's cut out for it, and there's nothing. I don't see anything wrong with someone trying something, not liking it, and then quitting it. I don't. That's not heartbreaking. Please don't need more people keeping them.
I would recommend, especially with something like the Flow Hive. One of the it's for sort of for the same reason. One of the same reasons that I recommend against packages is because you're spending so much money to start. And the more money you spend, the more you want to protect your investment, and that's where the effect on your decision making comes in. Leading people to treat the dark side.
The dark side.
Ooh, this is interesting.
Yeah, you can make a song. Well, that actually, I'm gonna have to get heading to bed soon over here on the East Coast. I got to get up really early for work.
Alrighty, well, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, let's do this again. I'll be more ready next time. Have some stuff to wrap
I'm
up.
planning on doing this. I'd like to do it for like an hour every week.
Yeah.
Just do, and I'll probably like to do it at different times every week as well, so we have able to talk to people that are available at different times. I try to do it at this time so that it's a little early for people on the West Coast, but it's a good time for people on the East Coast. So maybe next time I'll do it later.
All right. All right. Well, have a good rest of your live stream here. I'll see you next week.
All right, have a good one.
Take care.
Bye. Do I kick you?
I'm trying.
Is
Can you
that how it
see me? No, I don't think I'm on there. All right.
All right, I kicked Bruce. Whatever. Anybody have any more questions? I'm going to stay on here until 5 my time, which will be 8 East Coast time. Still got 20 people watching. What else can I tell you all about? Let's see. What have I been working on lately? Still moving shipping containers. I got some studded snow tires on my truck today, which was a chore. So I called up the local tire place and was like, hey, I want these specific tires and I want studs in them. Can you do that? And they're like, we can do the studs, but we can't get those tires. I'm like, well, okay, well, I'll buy them online and then I'll take them to you and you can put the studs in. And so I bought the tires. They showed up this morning and I took them and they were like, yeah, we're not going to do that. It doesn't make money. And I'm going, well, I'm here with the thing and I'm going to pay you to do the thing. So how much money is it going to take? Anyway, they didn't want to do it. So I went to another place and they were like, well, we don't balance that size of tire here. So, maybe you want to take it to somebody else. I was like, look, freaking take my money. Just do the job. I'll pay for it. Anyway, so I eventually got them to do it. They haven't. Oh, shoot. I should probably call. That was probably them telling me that they were done. Let's see. Have to ask Bruce. I treat our bees when they need it, but no more than necessary. I wish I didn't have to, but others are not keeping their mites under control. I have no choice. I don't buy any of that. No offense. They don't need it. That's a choice that you're making. And I haven't seen any good evidence that mites around the way are causing that many problems for other people. Okay, that's spam. What's the best way to go about cleaning up Langstroth hive with bees in it that has been untouched for 3 years? With bees in it? If there's problems in it that's that bad, you're going to have to cut out the frames that aren't working for you. Sorry, I'm having to do this while I'm talking to you. Yeah, probably warmer weather. TFB is not about interfering with natural selection, correct? Does that mean most IPM breaks? IPM brood breaks aren't really considered treatment free for me. That's a personal thing. It's not the worst thing, but again, that should be like a short term thing that you're going to do, not a long term management decision. That's something that you do in the first year or two so that you can get through winter and have a good population to expand from. Once you have enough bees that you can start letting them die, that's where everything starts to work well. What have I been up to for the past couple months? Well, let's see. I did fire season firefighting this last year in August, September, and October. I drove a lowboy hauling a D6, D4, and D6 cat. I drove a Type 2 water tender, which is 2,000 gallons. And I drove a Type 6 fire engine, which is like a Ford F450 with a 300-gallon tank on the back. And moved a bunch of containers, shipping containers, not a bunch. I've started selling shipping containers now, so that's a good revenue stream, pays the bills. I haven't made any money this year. It's been pretty rough. I've taken no income this year because of reduced demand due to the virus. But I have kept the bills paid, so that's optimal. That's good. Well, not optimal, but don't want to, if I lose my truck, that would be bad. Do you think it's possible to have yards of colonies 20 to 30 per yard that are untreated without them getting high mites and then absconding and toppling the next hive and so on? Yes, I do absolutely think that's possible. In my personal experience, I have not experienced the mite bomb issue. The last time I had a hive majorly crash because of mites, there were 2 hives sitting right next to it, and both of them survived and didn't seem to be affected at all. So, and again, I'm a bit more harsh than other people, so I want bees that can survive high mite loads. So if there's a huge crash and other colonies around it survive, then so much the better. What time do they close? Probably at 5. Oh well, bad timing. Well, let me answer these last couple questions real quick so I have time to call them before they close and see how long they're going to be open still. I mean, they called me at 4:44, so I can't even get there in 16 minutes. So I don't know what they're expecting to do there. All right, last questions. What about other IPM? Anything seem okay to you? I don't know. It's IPM as a philosophy has never really appealed to me. So I'm not interested in trying to save hives. It's not my responsibility to keep them alive. It's their job. So to me, anything that helps them is something that I don't ultimately be wanting to do. I might want to do it initially just so that I have enough hives to split from. But once I've learned how to split and get enough hives so that I can afford to lose some, then to me, all of that stuff should fall away. And the other thing is, the Bee Informed survey kind of helps us figure out which of those things is effective. Brood breaks are effective. Screen bottom boards are generally not. Drone removal is not particularly effective, maybe a little bit sometimes, but not consistently if you look across the years. So yeah, that's my views on that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and try and get a phone call off before 5 here. Thank you all for joining me. It's been great talking to you. I will schedule another one of these for next week. I think it'll be on Thursday next week. I think I'm moving a container on Friday. So we'll try to do Thursday maybe later so that we can get West Coast people after work. Thanks a lot. Have fun keeping bees, because if you're not having fun, skiing is fun. Good night.